still continuing to dial in and hang out with us. Nice to see so many faces here already. As we are getting started here, tell us where you are calling in from in the chat. Let us know where you are. So far, I think our biggest cohort of the day is from Texas. So let's see if there are any other geographic cohorts that can beat Texas out. And see what we've got in there. Oh, we've got another Texas from Shannon. We're keeping it alive, and Jennifer. Welcome, everybody. Really nice to see everyone. We are going to get started here in just a minute. We are here with Francisco Bram. So if you are here for something else, you lucked out because this is definitely going to be better. This is going to be fantastic. So really happy to have you all here. Francisco, when you're ready to share your slides, you can go right ahead and do that. Really quick housekeeping for everybody on the line. We are, really excited to have this conversation with you and bring all of Francisco's awesome knowledge to you. But we also like hearing all of your thoughts and ideas as well. So I encourage you all to hang out in that chat, talk to each other, answer questions for one another, and share kind of comments and feedback about what has worked for you. So the chat is definitely the place that you want to hang out as you are chatting with one another. If you have a question that you want to make sure that Francisco sees and that I see so I can flag it for him, you should post that in the Q&A section down below. So that's kind of the divide there on what you want to look at. And again, we really love having really good questions. That's, I think, the best part of every conversation. So without further ado, welcome to everybody. Francisco, you can pop me to the next slide. And another one from Mike from Texas. Texas just totally takes the cake. All right, Texas, you win. We're delighted to have you here. So hello, my name is Georgina Donahue. I am the Director of Community at Pragmatic Institute. Really happy to have you all. This conversation today is brought to you by the Pragmatic Alumni Community, which, if you haven't checked it out yet, is a peer-to-peer network full of all your fellow Pragmatic alumni swapping tools and tactics. So if you'd like to carry on the conversation after our hour together today concludes, come down and find us in the pack. We will drop you a link for how you can sign up for that if you're an alumni. You can pop to the next slide. And as I mentioned before, today we're talking with Francisco Bram. And he is the head of global product marketing at Uber Eats, which means that he's responsible for marketing programs, go-to-market strategies, product launches, and he manages a product portfolio that comprises some things that you've probably used or heard of. Uber Eats for Merchant, Uber for Business, and Uber Health. So we're super excited to talk to him today because Francisco is going to walk through a hands-on case study of how his team at Uber found really creative ways to listen to the audience, collect really meticulous user insights from sometimes surprising sources you wouldn't think of, and how they really used all of that knowledge and brought it all together to build just powerhouse go-to-market strategies, which is the dream, right? So Francisco is going to get practical and tactical today. So get ready to learn. A quick reminder for everyone, you do not need to take word for word notes today, although it's so good you might be tempted to. We're going to send you a recording of this call once we wrap up. So you'll get that from us after. So if you have to pop off early, no worries, you can catch up async afterwards. So that's plenty of talking from me because I really want to hear from Francisco. So without further ado, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Georgina. And hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm super excited to share with you some of the learnings that we've gathered over the last few years in terms of how to best really ground your product strategy, your go-to-market plan in true understanding of customer needs and wants. So what I'm going to walk you through today is the role of product marketing, the evolution of product marketing in the 21st century, and then walk you through an example of how to really build a customer-centric go-to-market plan. So if you think about businesses in general, they have really two functions, marketing and innovation. And it's really in that intersection between marketing and innovation that product marketing lives. It's really that function that helps to drive growth because we listen to the customer, we are the voice of customer, we bring those insights in to drive and foster innovation, and then we translate that innovation into a plan that can help drive growth through our marketing channels. And a lot of the times people confuse this notion of, we just need to go and be first to market, come up with a solution really quickly and launch it. But pioneering isn't always the same as innovation. In fact, I found that most of the times pioneering does not translate into innovation. It does translate into being the first to really uncover a critical need in the market. But as you'll see from other examples that you've probably all been exposed to, a lot of the companies today that you would consider being innovative were not the first to market. For example, Google, also known as Backrub, that was actually their first name, actually was not the first company to develop a search engine. Archie Query Form was, and most of us probably never heard of them. AT&T came up with the first MP3 player. Most of us probably never heard of that, yet Apple truly revolutionized it. And the same thing with, if you think of social media, MySpace was really at the forefront of social media, yet it was truly Facebook that innovated and today really dominates the market. But the best story for me is actually a very old story, but I actually always like to tell this story, and I've told this story in multiple talks before, and that's the story behind the best thing since sliced bread. If you're not familiar with this expression, it really is an expression that it's used for the latest, greatest innovation. So if a company launches a new innovative product, people tend to say, oh, that's the best thing since sliced bread. Now, the interesting thing about this expression is that the early beginnings of sliced bread were really not great. In fact, it all started in 1912 with this German scientist living in the US. In fact, he is a German descent, and he developed this first ever sliced bread machine. And it's really a machine that just sliced bread. Now, the reasons for him thought that this was a need in the market is unclear, but nevertheless, he was ingenious enough to come up with a machine that would optimize the slicing of bread. And he built a company, he had the patent, he went on trade shows and events, and even encountered fire in one of his warehouses. Nevertheless, he overcame all of it, and he kept pushing this notion of we need to slice bread. Yet, for the first 15 years, nobody bought the idea of sliced bread. It wasn't until 1929, the Great Depression, where bread was actually the most sought out product because it was affordable and it could be easily manufactured. So a company called Wonder out of Illinois saw an opportunity. And instead of just going all in and saying, let's just try to promote sliced bread, let's maybe do a little bit of a study in terms of who our audiences could be, their needs and pain points. And so they found that there's three audiences they need to target, two B2B and one B2C. Bakeries, because at that time, bakeries were often finding that they were inefficient, that they needed to ration bread even better. And so they could be a great customer. They found that supermarkets, they knew that most of their items were not being bought because people couldn't afford it, but bread was always being sold out. And they wanted to offer bread as fresh as the bakeries. And then the households, of course, the consumers. And actually did a study where they found that housewives, on average, ended up cutting 20 slices of bread per day for the entire household. So they decided that this is a great sort of market, and we should position this. They licensed the device from Otto, and they started going aggressive on the marketing. So they launched their first in 1930, their first ever sliced bread package called Wonder Bread. And then they promoted it to the bakeries. We will deliver to you fresh bread every day on time, so you never have to worry about running out of bread. They also said to the supermarkets, don't worry, it's 6 hours fresher than ever before, and it will last longer in shelf lives because of the packaging. And then they went to the households, and they, of course, they spent 80% of their budget truly promoting to the mothers. Again, remember, these are different times. Back then, mothers made all the decisions in terms of what goods to buy for the family. So they went and started promoting Wonder Bread as a way to build stronger bodies in 8 different ways. They actually quantify all 8 different ways: better muscle, bones and teeth, body cells, blood. Clearly, the FDA didn't regulate any of this at the time. And he was so successful because the next year, they ended up promoting 12 different ways that sliced bread actually makes children grow stronger. Look at the picture there, actually measuring the person, the little kid growing faster because they were eating sliced bread. And they did comparisons with meat, milk, fish, and eggs. Of course, unregulated stuff at the time. Now, they really went all in. And whether we agree or not with their sort of messaging on that advertisement, they made sliced bread one of the most popular products even today in supermarkets. You would go to a supermarket today, you'll find shelves and shelves of different types of sliced bread. So the lesson here is you don't have to be first to truly innovate, but you need to partner with those that are innovative and pioneers. And so this is a great example of, you have someone who engineered the product, and then you have someone who innovated the market. And product marketing is critical here, because product marketing is not necessarily the function that actually is going to invent the product or engineer the product, but we are the ones who are uncovering insights, helping to segment the market, understand the different needs and points and pain points from the different audiences, and then help truly take something that maybe like sliced bread nobody cared about into a very exciting product. So what I'm going to walk you through today really is, how do we help engineering businesses or teams to really invest in innovative solutions by truly understanding and grounding their product innovations in customer insights, but also how do we move an organization towards the 21st century? And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that. And then I'm going to walk you through an example of customer delight. So marketing in the 21st century. So reaching 50 million people today, it's a lot easier than it was 20 years ago or even longer than that. In fact, if you look at airlines, it took them 68 years to reach 50 million passengers. It took automotive companies 62 years to reach 50 million drivers. It took Uber only 6 years to reach 50 million monthly active users. And we're just talking about Uber rides. So reaching people today, it's a lot easier. And that's because of the evolution of all of the technologies. In fact, if you think about the beginnings of marketing, especially in the United States, it started in 1845 with product marketing. Marketing really started with product marketing. The very first example of marketing was the Blue Book or Tiffany's product catalog. And this was basically a catalog that featured all of Tiffany's products with a clear value proposition and a price. And that's really core foundational product marketing. What is the value proposition of a product? How much is it going to cost you? And it was so successful that a few years later, then Sears, the famous Sears catalog, really revolutionized catalog marketing, or in mail order catalog marketing. And it became very popular. Again, pure product marketing. But of course, if you look at the evolution of marketing, things were really slow in the first years of marketing. First product catalog, it took another 30 to 40 years until you saw the evolution of that marketing into print ads, and then radio ads, TV ads, telephone marketing, and then again another 30 to plus years to SMS and text messaging. And then suddenly we hit the early or the mid 90s and early 2000s, and then marketing really exploded because you started to see the evolution of online marketing, from email marketing, SEO, SEM, to pay-per-click, AdWords, then the introduction of Salesforce.com for B2B businesses, WordPress, LinkedIn, Facebook, Yelp. And today, it's just unstoppable. Today we're talking about Clubhouse and a few other new social media sites like TikTok. And we don't know. I would go ahead and say that the most important channel for us to market in 5 years doesn't even exist today. And that's probably true. And that's really accelerated the way that organizations need to evolve. Especially in B2B. If you have some B2B folks out there, I also wanted to make sure you get some love. And so here's the evolution of B2B marketing. It used to be that you had a salesperson would knock on your door with a catalog or with the actual product, do a demo in front of the door, and then you either buy or not. And that used to be the B2B way of doing business back in the early 19th century. Today, it's entirely different. Today, you have a strategy plan, then you have to build awareness with all the different channels that I mentioned before. Then you have to generate interest with webinars, blogs, ebooks, trade shows, and events. Then you start the evaluation process with sales demos, sales tools, sales assets, then loyalty, advocacy, cross-sell, upsell. So it's a very long and detailed journey. And it's not enough to say, I'm a marketing manager and I can help you, sell your products. You need specialists. And that's why an organization a marketing organization in the 21st century is a hyper-specialized organization. You have product marketing, marketing research, creative production, brand marketing, growth marketing, CRM, which is basically all of your own channels, whether it's email, blog, or app messaging, PR and media, regional marketing, responsible to driving demand generation and lead generation if you're in B2B in your local country. And then content marketing specifically for B2B, like thought leadership content, blogs, and so on. And then, of course, marketing analytics, measuring the impact of all these different initiatives. So if you tell me you're a marketing manager today, I really don't know what you do, because today that term is very broad. Today, you really have to fall into one of these different elements, unless, of course, you're the leader of the organization. Then, of course, you can be the VP of marketing. But the key element here, product marketing, if you look at the way we're structured, product marketing as the first marketing function is still here today, and it's more important than ever. Because if you think about an orchestra, you have all these different musicians, a cello player, a violinist, and if they all play at their own tune, you don't get a symphony, you get a ton of noise. So what you need is a conductor, someone who's going to help all these different musicians stay in tune with one tone of voice, so that you can create a symphony across all the different instruments, and people are really inspired and motivated and emotionally connected to that symphony. And it's really product marketing. We're really the conductors of that entire marketing orchestra. We built a narrative, we built a plan, we identify the audiences, we know how to speak to each audience, and then we make sure that all these different channels are aligned with that strategy so that you tell a story, a true story well throughout the different touch points. So now that we sort of got a good understanding of how marketing evolved, now we need to get into the roots of product marketing, which is really that notion of being truly customer obsessed and being the voice of customer internally. And here's a purpose statement that we have that we use at our marketing team at Uber, specifically product marketing. So we work tirelessly to earn our customers' trust and business by solving their problems. We use data to understand them, communicate, and delight them. So I'm going to walk you through the 3 key elements of this particular purpose statement. Everything at Uber begins and ends with customer data. So we have 4 teams that we work very closely with. From data science, this is a team that looks at our internal user and customer data, and they segment our data, and they'll tell us about interesting behaviors or interesting potential opportunities for us. We also have UXR, which is user experience and research. What they do is they help us to test new concepts. They also help us to build a customer journey, a journey map, so that we can identify areas of potential gaps and build a new solution for it. Then you have marketing research. This is where we learn about different personas. Just because you have a product that seems to fit the majority of the market doesn't mean that that particular message should be one size fits all. In fact, more often than not, it is a very personalized message that you need to build. There's different personas. So marketing research helps us to uncover those personas. Then marketing analytics helps us to do A/B testing, test impact of different messages, narratives, channels, and then also measure the impact of our campaigns. And I'm going to walk you through an example in a few minutes of how we use all of these different teams to actually launch a product and be very successful in doing so. The second element is we tirelessly look for ways to communicate value. And so you probably all know this, right? You have own channels, which is your app messaging. If you're B2B, you have your business dashboard messaging. In the case of Uber Eats, you have the restaurant manager messaging. You have your push notifications, email, text messaging. You have also your earned channels, newsroom, press release, media briefings, podcasts. And then you have your paid channels. This is where perhaps 95% of your budget goes into. It's really social ads, search ads, out of home. If you're in an industry that relies on out of home, trade shows, radio spots, etc. But what we also try to do is how do we constantly innovate the channels that we own, because those are the most cost-effective channels. And so at Uber, we have about almost 100 million monthly active users. We used to have over 100 million pre-COVID. With COVID, of course, a lot of people stopped using Uber rides. And so that monthly active users came down a little bit, but it's coming back up again. And so we knew that we have all these different, we call them quote unquote eyeballs, meaning you're looking at our product. We know you're looking at our product. So how can we market to you solutions that are relevant to you? So we started investing a lot in our in-app messaging. So this is actually a platform that was built by product marketing in conjunction with product. If you look back at 5 years ago, none of this existed in the Uber platform, in the Uber Rides app. So it was really recently that product marketing worked very closely with the product team to actually roll out this in-app messaging platform, which is now contextually based and based on your user preferences. So for example, the home screen will feature regular promotions, just one more ride to get 25% off. This is what we call the Jumbotron, which captures half of your screen. And the idea here is if we're launching a new product, let's make sure we feature that up front when you turn on the app so you know about our new solutions. But also, if you are waiting for that driver, and we all been there, and I know that I've done this a lot, we're constantly looking at the phone, when is my driver arriving? We know you're looking at the phone, looking at the map to see where the driver's at. So why not use that opportunity to also feature messaging? Hey, it looks like this is perhaps a business trip. Do you want to switch profiles to a business profile? So you can get automated receipts and you can pay with your corporate card. But also on trip, a lot of the times we are in the car and we're looking in the phone app to see how long will it take us to get there. And you're just scrolling through it. So let's also use that as an opportunity on trip to feature relevant information. We just announced that in our recent press conference that if you are on trip, we can now also help you order already food. So we know that you're heading home and perhaps you're looking to, it's that time of the day, maybe it's 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. We know it's perhaps a time for you to, that you feel hungry. So we can actually say, do you want to go ahead and order already from your favorite restaurant near your home? Because we know that, and you can go ahead and already place that order. Or for example, we can even say, you're coming from work, you're doing a commute with Uber, and we can say, hey, do you need to restock on your groceries? If so, do you want to place an order here? And then groceries will be ready to be picked up or delivered to your door by the time you get home. So we know all of that information because we deliver groceries, we deliver food, and we deliver you to your home. So we can combine all those different touch points and really offer a magical experience for you. And of course, there's a hub for additional offers and messages. So just to give you a little bit of an insight how successful this channel has been, we get 1 billion global monthly impressions. And these are true impressions, meaning if you go outside and you do an out-of-home advertisement, a lot of these companies will tell you, oh, you got about 500 million impressions. Well, those are not true impressions. What those are is an assessment of the traffic pattern that they got throughout that day. And they assume based on how many cars and how many people normally tend to be in the car, how many people might have looked at your actual ad. In this example, we know you looked at it because you're looking at our phone, you turn it on, you opened it. So it's true impressions. And we get about 4% engagement from those impressions. And it may not seem like a big number, but 4% of 1 billion is quite a lot. And not only that, it's free because we don't really pay for this channel. It's our own channel. So it's really, really effective channel for us. We do the same thing for B2B. So if you have B2B folks out there, we do the same thing for our restaurant manager app, as well as the business's dashboard and any other touch point that we work with companies on. Now, the last point is customer delight. So how do we take all of this? How do we take all these specialists in our marketing organization? How do we take all this research and all these channels and we bring an innovation to life and we market and use it to actually not only grow awareness, drive product adoption, but even lower costs for the business. And this is really critical. A lot of the times people look at marketing, especially product marketing, not as a function to lower costs. They look at finance to do that. But I'm going to share an example of how product marketing can leverage insights and research and experimentation to even lower costs for the business. So that's the third element. We exceed customer expectations by solving real world problems. So when I joined Uber back in 2019, one of the first reports that I've encountered when joining Uber was that Uber was the most expensive vendor in 2018 and 2019. This meant that there is a large section of the population out there that are using Uber as a way to expense for trips. And so we asked the question, how big is this consumer business traveler population? And the answer was very unclear at the time. There was some assumption of what that might be, but that's when product marketing, data science, UXR, marketing research, channel marketing, that's when we all came together to really build a go-to-market for this particular audience. So we started with data science. And so we work with data science, product marketing, the product team, and data science. And we asked a simple question. So we have about 100 million users on our platform. This is pre-COVID. Let's understand how many of them could be business travelers. Because if they have a corporate card on file, and we know because you're paying for our trip, so we know what card you have, then it could be a business traveler. And for many, you probably don't know this, but the first five numbers of a credit card called the BIN number will tell you if it's a corporate card or if it's a personal card. So we could look at all the cards that are being used to pay for our trips and say, do the first five numbers relate to a corporate card or a personal card? And if it's corporate card, then we know they must be traveling for work. And then the second question was, because not everyone has a corporate card. For example, consultants. Consultants are a big user of our platform because they travel out for work. But consulting companies like McKinsey or KPMG, they allow consultants to use their personal cards and then get reimbursed. Because if they use their personal cards, they get points. And so it's a nice perk for consultants that travel a lot to actually accumulate points on their personal cards and then get reimbursed by the company. So we can't just assume that because you don't have a corporate card on file, you're not a business traveler. So we wanted to look at behaviors such as frequent trips to the airport, trips from airports to hotels, and international trips, all indications that you may be or may be behaving like a business traveler. And we found that about 25% of all of our users behave this way. This is what we call the business traveler lookalike persona. So it's about 25 million people already in our platform that behave like business travelers. Now we know who they may behave like a business traveler lookalike. Now we needed to talk to them. So this is where we partner with our UXR teams. And the UXR teams built a very detailed customer journey that really helped us to understand all the different touch points of a potential business traveler. So all the different stages from pre-trip, on-trip, and post-trip. What are they doing, feeling, thinking, deciding, problems, opportunities, and then areas where we can actually help solve from some of those pain points. And that's what we learned from this sort of research, is that there are a lot of opportunities to solve for their pain points. For example, if you're a business traveler, you don't want to arrive at the airport from your flight that is already late and you're on a time schedule and have to walk all the way to the parking lot and still wait for the Uber. Why not be picked up right outside your gate? Or for example, they like points because points is a way to reward them for their loyalty to the brand, or they like extra comfort, or they like to be able to set their own preferences when they are in vehicles. So we learned all of these, and these are things we could actually solve for with existing products or new products. Then we work with marketing research to really understand the different personas. And so we found that there's a total of 5 different personas: jet setters, road warriors, locals, techies, and newbies. And they all share some commonalities, such as travel policy, personal time, what they prefer in ride hailing. But besides the things that they share in common, there's a lot of things that makes them unique. And that's when we dove a bit deeper into understanding the different demographics, firmographics, and needs and wants of each persona. So the jet setters, for example, tend to be C-level people. They tend to spend most of their money on business class flights. They're not price sensitive because they're on a company's dime, and they're executive people. And so their needs are really, reliability, flexibility, comfort. While road warriors are type of consultants, salespeople, service engineers. They're constantly on the road. And for them, they want to be rewarded by always being loyal to a particular company. Locals tend to be more like lawyers or accountants that travel with Uber, but mostly within the confinements of the city. They don't tend to go outside the city. That's why we call them locals. And then techies and newbies, they kind of behave the same way. They're either new entrants to the workforce or they're very tech savvy. And they love, for example, to travel for work. They see it as a perk, but they always take 1 or 2 extra days to really enjoy and take some time for leisure. This actually came to be known as bleisure, business and leisure. So we wanted to make sure that we understand each persona because they all use different channels too. They all behave differently. So we wanted to learn and then build dedicated campaigns to them. So here's an example that our UXR team did. They basically mapped it out, and obviously Mimi is not a real person, but here is an example of what the typical profile of a jet setter could look like, typical profile of a road warrior could look like, and we did that for every single persona. So with all these insights in mind, we then work with the product team and we work with a consumer team to see what solution can we best position to this audience. And so the team was able to do a series of initiatives, such as we partnered with American Express to allow those particular consumers that travel with Uber for work to get extra points every time they use Uber income and they pay with an American Express card. We're able to also create a business profile that allows for all your receipts to be automatically expensed to your expensing system, whether it's Certify or Concur. So if you would travel for work with Uber, you can use your business profile and you don't have to worry about saving receipts and then spending an afternoon expensing receipts. And remember, Uber was the most expense spender across the board. And then when it comes down to food, Uber Eats is also the most expense spender. So what we found is like, let's make this journey for them simpler so that they don't have to worry about saving receipts or getting those emails and then having to submit to Concur. We'll do that automatically for them. And then let's promote to them a vehicle option that is designed for this particular audience. For example, Uber Comfort offers new vehicles, extra legroom, and higher rated drivers. But also, we heard that they like to personalize the experience. So Uber Comfort allows you to, for example, set your climate preferences. So if you want to have cool or hot temperature or climate inside the vehicle, you can set that beforehand, and then the driver will set that up for you. You can also, because you're traveling for work, you probably want to be on a call, you probably want to do some work, or maybe you're just tired from an 8-hour flight, you want to sleep, you can actually set quiet mode so that the radio will be off and the driver will not be engaging in conversation. So you can really be on the phone, or you can do your work, or you can just sleep. So we built a really sort of delightful experience for this particular rider. And in most, not every airport, unfortunately, but in a lot of the major airports, you can actually be picked up outside of the gate, as opposed to having to walk all the way to the parking lot. So if you're on a time crunch, if you go with Uber Comfort or even higher, you will be picked up right outside your gate on certain airports. So now that we have the product and solution, we wanted to test the messaging. So A/B testing, and this is where we work with marketing analytics, which includes a team of CRM colleagues as well as performance marketing. And we wanted to test different messaging to make sure that we go to the market with the best value prop. So we had a lot of value props that we learned from research, but we wanted to go with the ones that really resonated the most. So we did a 2-week experiment in the US, Brazil, and Mexico, 3 of our biggest markets. And we divided that audience into 3 groups. Treatment group A, treatment group B, and control group. Control group is the group where we don't do anything. It's business as usual. And it's the baseline to measure the impact of treatment group A and B. Treatment group A, we wanted to test the narrative or the value prop of you can get extra points when you travel for work with Uber. And then treatment group B, we wanted to test the narrative of when you travel for work with Uber and you select the business profile, all of your work and personal trips will be separate. The cards that you use to pay are separate and expensing will be automatic. And what we found was, for example, that both treatments returned 4 times higher engagement than the control group. That's great. That's to be expected. And then that treatment group A performed 20% better in the US than B. So in the US, people care more about points. And then in Brazil and Mexico, 32% of the audience reacted better to treatment group B. So that means for them, it was more important to keep work and personal trips separate. So we learned this and we tailored the messaging accordingly. But it's not just about the value prop. We also tested different channels. So we tested, for example, push notifications. And we wanted to test the same example. We wanted to test if push notifications are really a meaningful way to drive engagement, which it is, 1.5 times higher engagement than the control group. And then we wanted to test which one actually relates better. And we found that A related better because B was very unclear. And in some instances might even indicate that the profile was created without your consent. So we learned that in the experiment. It was great to hear so that we avoid going to market with something that might not resonate well. But we can also save the company money. And another thing that we've done is, you probably all know this, you're all marketers, you probably all have to deal with you need to find budget to launch a new product, and you need to pay for photography. And a photo shoot is quite expensive, especially now in COVID, where it's really hard to do a photo shoot. It's even more expensive and time intensive, and it takes a lot of time. Illustrations, on the other hand, are quicker or more affordable, and perhaps can have the same impact. So we wanted to test that notion. So for this new campaign, we tested the same exact message. Keep working personal trip separate, keep working personal trip separate. But the only difference between the two treatments was one was using illustration, the other one was using photography. The same thing for a different message about automation. We use illustration, we use photography. And what we found was that illustration actually had higher engagement across all of the countries, whether it's US, Brazil, and Mexico. Illustration performed better. And so that, if you think about a photo shoot that costs between, let's say $75,000 to $100,000 and $200,000 and $300,000, depending on the size of the photo shoot, versus $10,000 invested in illustration, which could even be done internally, we save the company a lot of money, but just saying we don't need a photo shoot. We have evidence to demonstrate that we can go with illustration. So that's another way you can also experiment, not just content and channel, but also the visual elements that you put in your campaign. So with all of this in mind, we launched the campaign, and between October and December of 2019, we're actually able to drive 4.5 million new business profiles in our platform. We increased business trips by 14%, billings by 16%, and bookings by 16%. We still left a holdout of 10% control group. We always do that because we want to say, we want to test how successful the campaign was, and that's how we measure the metrics. And then after 3 months, we roll out to 100%. But this is how we leverage the entire team at our disposal, whether it's research to channel marketing, to marketing analytics and experimentation, to really build with product and engineering a good solution that we can launch to market and really innovate. So this is my last slide. In summary, product marketing is critical, more critical today than ever before. And that's probably why you see that product marketing hiring is really hot right now in the market. It's really, really hot. In fact, it's hard. We have so many product marketing roles open, and we just have a hard time finding enough candidates or quality candidates that we can fill for those roles. And that's because product marketers are truly the voice of customer. They relentlessly pursue the marketing truth. They never stop learning about your audience. Data is marketing's best friend. And I love this quote: even when you're marketing to your entire audience or customer base, you're still simply speaking to a single human being at any single time. And that's really important. Don't assume that your message is going to be one size fits all. It's going to work for everyone. Assume that there's always personas, and you need to understand what works with each persona. An example I use: some personas care about points, other personas care more about automation of the receipts. And learning that and experimenting is really critical. The second point is content is really key. You probably heard this before. And so it's not just about creating content. That's easy. It's about creating truthful content and experimenting to know and be confident how successful you will be. And so I also love this statement that content is the atomic particle of all digital marketing. If you have great content that is grounded on customer insights, you can really stand out in the noise of content that is out there. Because let's be honest, we are inundated with tons of noise today in terms of what is out there available to us. And I love the quote: good content isn't about good storytelling. It's about telling a true story well. And that true story is, of course, based on your customer insights. And finally, if content is king, engagement is queen, meaning never stop expanding on your channels. What worked 5 years ago may not work as much today. And you saw the evolution of marketing. There's tons and tons of new channels. You need to always stay in tune with what's new. Ideally, you're one of the first ones to leverage those new channels. So it's never enough to rely on your traditional channels. And by the way, I'm calling traditional channels Facebook and Instagram, because that's now today the traditional channels. 20 years ago, traditional channels would be TV and radio. But today, TikTok is probably the new age of channels, or all these new social media sites are coming up. So always expand on your channels, invest in channel specialists. Don't assume because you are a user of a channel that you know how to optimize for that channel. It's always great to invest in channel specialists. And then I love this quote, which complements all the other two quotes. Great marketing is a true story unfolding across all possible customer touch points, meaning leverage all the channels to tell that story almost like a Netflix show where you have episode 1, episode 2 builds on episode 1, 2 builds on episode 1, and so on and so forth. You kind of tell that story across the different channels. So with that, I'll stop now, and obviously open for questions, but you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I do have my own website if you're interested in some of the things I write about product marketing. I haven't written in a while, but there's a few things that I write there if you're interested. And just connect with me. I'll love to hear from you and see how I can help as well. So with that, I'll pass it over back to Georgina.
Awesome. That was absolutely fantastic, and really appreciate that. I encourage everybody to connect with Francisco online or on LinkedIn. We have a really quick poll for you just about Pragmatic's production of this webinar that will pop up here. If you could take the poll really quickly while we let some questions come in. So there are a couple questions that are really good ones, Francisco, and I'm excited to ask you about. If others have questions, now is the time to get them in the queue. As you are kind of thinking about the takeaways and kind of the all the details that are in this conversation. So the first question that I have for you is kind of a high level one, and that is, are there any privacy considerations with the capture and use of user data? Of course, for you, it's all, most of that information was from within your own kind of native channels, but is there any privacy consideration that you have to kind of navigate?
Absolutely. We always comply with the regulations of every country. For example, in Europe, they have strict regulations about the use of user data. And so we 100% are compliant with it. And we're always compliant. And the most important thing here is we don't use that information like the way you use our app. We don't use that information and sell it to anybody else. No, that information stays. It's anonymized. We actually look at users. We don't look at exactly the names. We could, if, of course, that capability is there, but that's not the intent. The intent is, how do we know how to build a better product for you? Ultimately, if you're using our product, we want to know how to make that experience even better, more magical, for two reasons. Number one, obviously, we want you to consider Uber as the preferred partner for you guys. Like, we want to be the app that you think of when you're looking at taking a ride, when you're looking at ordering food, when you're looking at ordering groceries. So how do we build an experience that is so aligned with how you would like it to be that you don't think about anyone else? And then number two, of course, is how do we solve for your pain points? If we don't know what those pain points are, we don't know what to solve for. And one way to know what those pain points are is by, okay, this particular segment of our user base behaves in such way. Let's talk to them and say, hey, we noticed that you're for example, you're behaving in a certain way. We would love to know how we can help you build a better experience that is tailored to the way you use our app. And so that's how we use this information. We've never sold this information to anyone else. There's no plans to do so. And like I said, in most of the times, we just look at user X, user B, user C. We don't know who the people are. We just look at behaviors and then work with product teams and say, 25% of this population behaves like business travelers. They are on a time crunch. They need to be picked up outside of the airport. How do we build a better solution for them? That's how we use that information. Yeah,
definitely makes sense. And it's interesting also thinking about how you kind of are using this data and then kind of passing it to product management, right? Because there's also a question here about how you define or distinguish between the roles of product marketing and product management. And seems like, let's see what this question says. It seems the reference to product management is more about delivery. Would you consider that a fair approximation?
I would say product management and product marketing are kind of like embedded into both worlds. Like, product management is very much involved in our marketing strategy and plans. They contribute, they review our plans, they provide feedback, and vice versa. So product management's role is really, how do we build a roadmap of solutions that can help us grow the business, but can also help us grow the audience. And so they work with research as well. They work with UXR teams as well. So if they want to build a concept of, let's say we want to deliver clothing to your home, is the experience that we have today for grocery or for food the right experience for delivering clothing or for delivering your iPhone? So what product management will do is they will work with UXR to experiment on concepts of the best experience for product. Product marketing will try to work with them, but more to understand the behaviors that are behind the individual, so we can build a narrative that relates to that particular individual. And so you can think about it, if you think of a startup, you could possibly say that, the product manager is the COO, the person that actually, is making things happen and is delivering, to your point. And product marketing is kind of the CMO, thinking about how are we going to build a brand about this product? How are we going to name it? How are we going to price it, position it? How are we going to place it out there and raise awareness? So we consider product marketing as truly embedded in the product management function, but it sits in the marketing organization.
Gotcha. Totally makes sense. And the analogy that you used of a startup is a great lead into another question that we have from someone who is the head of marketing for a self-described super scrappy startup. And they are looking for your favorite ways to validate the value proposition, the core messaging, and the positioning on the cheap. So when you have limited budget and you are kind of scrabbling through a scrappy startup phase, do you have some favorite ways to do that for not a lot of cash?
Yeah, look, for example, this is funny, but it's true. Me and my wife are expecting. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll have our baby boy, and we had a list of names, and this is true. We ran a survey monkey, anonymous survey monkey. We just wanted to test how each name is perceived, and not just what name do you prefer, because that's just so random, right? Like naming is so subjective. We didn't really care about what name people prefer, but what perceptions are associated with certain names. And I just did this for fun, honestly. We didn't believe it's going to actually influence our decision. But I was able to get about 1,200 people to respond. And it's really easy to do. You set your budget, how much you want to spend, and people are willing to respond to surveys because they make money, and it takes them It takes them 5 minutes to respond to a simple survey. So you can actually do something that simple with a startup as well. You run a survey through SurveyMonkey or any other platform. There's plenty of platforms out there that actually have access to consumers that are willing to provide your feedback. So you can do that. And another way you can do is, if you already have a good value proposition that you're feeling strongly about, but you still want to confirm it, you just do A/B testing. That's another great way of experimenting, is do A/B testing. So I don't know what kind of startup that is, but if it's an app-based startup, you can run that messaging in the app for a specific group. And then another group, you'll run a different message. And then the other group, you don't do anything. That's your control group. And then you start to experiment, and you start to get some engagement. That's another way to experiment as well. Of course, you can always just reach out to your customers individually and have phone calls with them, which, by the way, I've done that. That was my first role ever in my career, was actually calling people. I was working for a startup in England. And my role is really to help the product team to identify what solutions to feature at the top of the website versus at the bottom. This is a long time ago. It's back in 2006. But I was actually cold calling people and just asking them and writing stuff down. So there's always scrappy ways to do it. But today, I think with technology that you have available at you, you don't even need to cold call anymore. You can just run some of these surveys on your own.
Awesome. Those are such great ideas. And I love that story too. Did you pick a name?
We have two names, and we decided that once the baby's out, we're going to look at our boy, and then we can decide, I think, is a X versus B. And if we don't agree, we'll just give them two names, one first name, one middle name, and then we're fine.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
And by the way, we're able to root out two names because the interpretations were like, I think 60%, 65% thought that particular name was associated with names that you give to dogs, for example. And that was a very interesting insight. So I'm not going to say the name because there might be somebody out there that has this name, but what I'm going to say is that people associate it. And it's like, okay, this is a really strong insight. Obviously, if we really truly love the name, we're going to go ahead with it anyway. But in this case, we're kind of like on the fence about the name, and this just really confirmed that, like, yeah, no, we're not going to go with this.
Yeah, yeah. What a fascinating anecdote, and a true testament that I think you're doing the right job. I think you found your calling, because you sound like a true product marketer to me. So let's see. Next question we have is a little bit about metrics. So what metrics does product marketing or should product marketing get assigned and measured on? Examples like adoption rate, retention rate, revenue, etc. What metrics matter to you when you're looking at your team's success?
Great question. And this is a question that unfortunately product marketers are not asking often enough. And I think we should be asking this question. In the old days, when the beginning of product marketing, Tiffany's, Blue Book and so on, I would say that was pretty simple and straightforward. It is product adoption or product sell, right? And I think it's still relevant today. Like if you're launching a product and let's say you're a product marketing manager for the Uber Comfort product or the Uber delivery, grocery delivery product, and you want to measure how many more people are using grocery over time, because that shows that whether or not your campaign is being effective. But as you become a leader, and you mentioned your team, so as you become a leader, you need to start thinking like an owner of the business. And that's when I started to look at different metrics beyond just product adoption. We start to look at customer lifetime value. If you have a subscription service, how often, are you able to, how over the course of their lifetime, how much you expect to get out of that particular customer? Is that expectancy going up or down? You look at retention rates, churn rates. How many people are using our platform that are then bouncing back off, are becoming inactive? Do we see them repeat a trip every 15 days or 30 days, or they just do once every 6 months? Why is that? So you also want to look at if you're in the B2B space, because I do have B2B product marketers in my team. You want to look at things like top of funnel, middle of the funnel. Like top of funnel is how many leads are we bringing into the funnel that can help sales convert into wins. And then middle of the funnel, how many of those people are in the funnel today that we can upsell and cross-sell into other products? So just because you're using Uber for rides doesn't mean you can't use Uber for food on Uber Eats. And so if you're in the B2B space, if you're a particular merchant on our platform and you're using Uber Eats just to deliver, why not also use Uber Eats to market your business? Because we do advertisement within Uber Eats as well for restaurants. So this is where you start to think like a business owner, like all the different metrics that can actually generate revenue. So I would say product marketing really should become more and more less about the channel metrics, because today, 21st century, you have channel specialists. So if you're looking at open rates and click-through rates and all of that, leave that to the channel expert. Product marketing, you're mostly concerned about metrics that really drive the business. Ultimately, you're building a go-to-market plan. So how do you prove the success of your go-to-market plan? It's not by engagement metrics, while those are important. It's by metrics that really impact the bottom line of your business.
I think that is such an important distinction. And, when you say it, it seems so simple that I could kick myself for not thinking about it that way before, you know what I mean? And I think that that's the mark of a really genius new idea, is that you're like, of course, that makes so much sense. So I think that's a really great insight and totally agree. So let's see here. What's the next question? We've got a couple. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, so I'm going to pick one for you. So this is a great question, because your work has been so data-driven and is just like really connected to the numbers and the findings. What do you do if your executives or your leaderships have a really strong opinion that's different than the data? Does the data always win? And how do you make that happen? How do you make that defense successful?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's a hard one to navigate always, because if you don't have full authority, sometimes you got to get buy-in. I'm lucky that I work at a company where every single leader respects and values data to a point where they don't feel, I don't think many leaders feel comfortable making a decision that it's not grounded in data. And so what I've found is that if you do your homework and you have data to prove your point, to say, for example, let's say, just giving an example I just used, let's say an executive, let's say your CMO says, why are we going to illustrations? I don't really like illustrations. I don't think it's, authentic. I don't think it really relates to people. It's a very personal decision. Maybe it's based on that particular CMO's experience over time in his life that he used photography a lot. If you come and say, look, we've tested this, illustration performed better, 33% better, and it is cheaper, more affordable, and we can deploy it in a matter of a week versus having to wait a whole month. I think it's very unlikely that the CMO is going to push back, but if he does push back, of course, you can always do both, right? You can go ahead with illustrations in the meantime and then do a photo shoot or update it with photos afterwards. So to your question is, how do you navigate? I think it will really depend on the leadership that you have, that you work with. Ultimately, it always comes down to the leader of the business. If they decide that that's the way they want to go, it's their business. They get to decide. But then if things don't go well, at least you and your team, you've done everything you could to let that leader know that there's a better alternative and you have data to support it. As opposed to you also go with your gut, and then everyone goes with their gut, and then it comes back and the data tells you that it was wrong. Then there's no thing that you can fall back onto. So this way, you always can say, we've done our homework. We've recommended this. It was still not listened to, but you've done your homework. And guess what? Next time, they will definitely listen to you because you were right and you've done your homework.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. All right, last question for you here. And if you have a question that we didn't get to, apologies that we ran short on time. I highly encourage you to reach out to Francisco and connect with him online and chat about your questions there. So last one, would you say that uncovering the insight about Uber being the most expensed item is what drove the entire sequence of product innovations and improvements? What other sources or tools or methodologies do you rely on to uncover insights that help you find ways to future-proof your product?
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't even say that particular report was what drove that that entire campaign. It was just one signal. We looked at a report as one signal, and I used that as a way to introduce the topic, but it wasn't the key driver for it. I think the key driver for it was we also looked with our data science team. Our data science team was also able to look and see that some particular users were actually, on average, spending more per trip than others, and it just so happened that those particular users ended up being business travelers. It all fit, so it was another signal point, which is, we have this report that says that Uber is the most expensed vendor. We also have this other signal that certain users spend more per trip than other users do. And so we started to try to bring all of it together. I think one way to keep in tune with potential signals is you always look at, obviously, trends, market trends. And those are obviously always available through market reports that either your company purchases or they actually run. But you can also, this is why I think data science is so critical, you can also have a team that is looking at how your particular users behave. And at Siemens, for example, we did that a bit too. At Siemens, which was more in the medical B2B space, we always looked, for example, if I'm referencing here ultrasound, we looked at how ultrasound devices are being used by doctors and what kind of ultrasound probes are being used more frequently versus other probes. And then we try to probe and like, why is that? And because sometimes you don't necessarily get a market report that tells you about it. And so we ended up identifying that obesity is a problem, that one particular probe is being used more because it was the better probe out there to image people with obesity, but it was not an ideal probe. So we found, okay, you're using this probe because a large section of the population that you're seeing is obese, and nevertheless, this probe is not ideal. So let's build a better probe. And so we ended up building a better probe that we launched. So I think always look at how your customer base is using your product. And if you don't have a customer base yet because you're brand new, you're a startup, look at trends in the market. What are, like if you're thinking of an idea for a particular segment, what are the influencers or key opinion leaders of that segment talking about? Attend conferences, trade shows, webinars, and see what what are the common themes that you see that will give you signals of things that you probably want to probe a bit more.
Awesome. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I really, from the very beginning, the story about Wonder Bread to the very end, all of the examples and tactical stuff that you gave us, really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. This has been awesome and really actionable. Love all of the data and info that you shared so generously with us. So thank you. Once again, folks, we have been hanging out with Francisco Bram. Callie dropped the link to his LinkedIn account in the chat, so be sure to grab that. We will also, a lot of people asked, we will make sure that you get a recording of this conversation in the next coming days. We will send that to you. And if you had fun with us today, come hang out again in 2 weeks. We are going to be chatting with Joy Levin about key customer insights that drive product marketing success. So wonderful to chat with you, Francisco. Thank you again very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.